Good Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports for CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Veterans reporting to Berea. Everybody will hop on a plane and they will head to the Greenbrier in West Virginia for the first full workouts of training camp tomorrow. Still no pads, but a full workout for the Browns. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on ESPN Cleveland talking about if Jim Schwartz's defense will finally be able to stop the run.
I still feel like they can get run on a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. If he puts Tomlinson and Ika in the game together, who's going to run on that? I mean, the problem is if they spread out the Browns defense with a multiple wide receiver formation and hand the ball off against Schwartz's pass rush line, that's where I think they're vulnerable because there's no elite linebacker waiting to tackle them. So I don't know. It's going to be like a chess match. I think this defensive coordinator will be able to adjust to things that happen in a game.
Let's welcome in G. Bush, 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. That last part of it is kind of one of the reasons I like Jim Schwartz. Guy that hasn't, you're not going to do anything to this defense he hasn't seen done, and he knows the next step.
Yeah, listen, he's not going to be confused in terms of guys running the football on him. When you look at what Jim Schwartz is able to do, and you look at the wide nine technique and some of the guys he has out with Zadarius Smith and you have Myles Garrett, what you're basically doing is you're unleashing your defensive linemen to basically, create havoc. Myles Garrett being outside of a tight end or being outside of the widest guy on the line of scrimmage pretty much eliminates the outside zone. It eliminates the stretch play. It eliminates a lot of the outside stuff. And there is the inside zone still, but like you've said, you drafted Siaki Iko as a guy that's going to be a run stopper. You still have Dalvin Tomlinson inside as a run stopper. And I think one of the things that the Cleveland Browns will preach to people and what you'll see is the Cleveland Browns defense a lot before was about catching. There's lots of times that, I was very frustrated with the defense because, sometimes you would have an aggressive defensive line. You can have that as a philosophy, but in the back end, you may be a little soft in coverage and you may be giving up a lot of cushions. It just seemed like the Cleveland Browns were soft up front. They really weren't getting any penetration in the backfield. You could count on your hands sometimes how many times in a whole season you would see one of the defensive linemen hit somebody in the backfield and have a tackle for loss. That's a philosophy, right? When you have a Myles Garrett and you have a guy like Zadarius Smith, those guys, you're telling them, hey, go be in the backfield, go make plays. Before, I don't think that was the emphasis. Also, I will say this, you're going to be dealing with a lot of people that are going to be more, I would say, more playing safeties to their strengths, as the strengths that they have. I thought Grant Delpit wasn't used a lot in the box, which he should have been. I also think that when you took a look at John Johnson III, he was used out of context. I just think in general, the defense and the way it went about its business was kind of soft. They didn't really have an identity. You have busted coverages on the back end, and when you can't cover anybody and you can't tackle anybody, and your safeties are the two highest tackle guys that you have on your team, you're going to be in a long dogfight. I think Jim Schwartz will fix that. Anywhere that he's ever been, they've made a tremendous jump in the first year and another big jump in that second year. And I think they have the guys up front to basically disrupt the run game.
So this is interesting. This is from Mac. We use his tweets quite a bit, and this kind of puts it in perspective. In 2022, Browns defense, led by Joe Woods, gave up 150 yards rushing 7 times. During the it's even longer than that, from 2016 to 2019 seasons, Jim Schwartz Eagles defense gave up that mark 8 times during the 4-year period. So it just kind of shows you the upgrade against the run has a little bit to do with the guy that's calling those defensive plays as well.
Yep, it definitely has something to do with it. Now, look, I've always already cautioned everybody, and you'll run this back sometimes because you're going to hear guys, trust me, that are going to say, well, Jim Schwartz doesn't blitz a lot. He's not bringing guys. He's not gonna blitz a lot, but what he will do he'll blitz bluff. He'll get guys up in the box and try to confuse the offensive lineman. But the majority of what he's gonna do is unleash his defensive line. And there's something that he, I came across in one of his seminars. I watched a lot of tape on him and what his philosophy is. He said to one side of the field, they're not even going to contain to one side of the field, which means, and he asks why you wouldn't have a traditional two-way contain with Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett. He said, usually back in the day, we used to run that. Now we moved away from that because what we want our best defensive end, which is Myles Garrett, we want him to have a two-way go. We want him to have the best move he can. If that best move is an inside move and he happens to have leverage problems or they get outside, that's fine. We have other things in the backside that'll take care of that. But we want our pass rushers to have the best ability to get upfield, to run their best pass rush move, and to get after the quarterback without worrying about containment. So I thought that was a really fascinating thing because I hadn't heard that too much around the league in terms of the traditional way you think about gap alignment and rushing a QB.
All right, this is from Pro Football Focus. 10 best players in the NFL right now, regardless of position. Patrick Mahomes, number 1. Aaron Donald, number 2. Trent Williams, number 3. Travis Kelce, 4. Myles Garrett checks in at 5, ahead of Bosa, Chris Jones, Devontae Adams, Micah Parsons, and Joe Burrow. And about Garrett, they say, with less help around him than any other top edge rusher last season. Garrett led the league in PFF pass rushing grade 93.5. Has the best pass rush win rate, 22.5% of any rusher with over 200 reps. And G. Bush, you would think, when you add a Zadarius Smith and an Okunronquo and even a Tomlins, when you put better pieces around him, he's going to get better. It just makes sense.
Yeah. He's going to have, to me, he's going to have a tremendous year. I think that a lot of times, and I've done videos on this on my YouTube channel, and I talk about sometimes how when you're devoid of talent and you're devoid of a quarterback, the quarterback usually takes most of the blame or gets most of the credit. And what you do, we focus on quarterback play so much here that when you don't have a quarterback or you're always constantly looking for one, the best player in your team always seems to get left behind a little bit. He always seems to be nitpicked a little bit. He's always seemed to be judged kind of harshly. And for Myles Garrett, sometimes the fans are on him because they want to see that next level. But if you go around the league, you get outside of Berea, you get outside of Cleveland and Ohio, you start to see very quickly how good Myles Garrett is. You take a look at those scores there. His pass rush grade, his win rush grades, his double teams, just his overall grade. But now couple that with the fact that he's going to have a Zadarius Smith, who, by the way, can rush the passer in his own right, who had a really great year against in Minnesota the first few games of the year. When you take a look at what they're going to be able to do as a tandem, as well as upgrading the defense, and we talked about Oronco too. We haven't even talked about him. They're going to have multiple guys that they can rush and move in there, and sometimes they're going to have a 4 defensive end line where you got Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett in the stand-up technique. Over the guards, and that's a very scary sight for people because of just what they can do athletically at the snap of the football. So I think that coupled with Jim Schwartz, you're going to see Myles Garrett do some stuff that you've been waiting for. And I think literally, and I said this before, I think he has a shot at breaking the sack record this year. And the reason I say that is because, after the car accident, Myles Garrett pretty much played the season injured, the whole entire season. He still had 16 sacks. Still didn't have anybody else on the other side of him because Jadeveon Clowney was a mitigated disaster last year. He had a bunch of young guys, Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas on the other end. And the D tackles, Taven Bryan and Jordan Elliott or whoever they had in there, weren't moving or doing anything to give him help. So this year with an upgraded line, upgraded coaching, and a system that actually fits him for the first time, I think it should be a thought process that he could possibly break the sack record this year.
All right. Along those lines, this is from Sports Illustrated. 4 reasons Myles Garrett gets 20 sacks in 2023. Number 1, we've talked about it. Defensive talent upgrades. Number 2, Jim Schwartz. Number 3, offensive improvement would give the Browns more leads and opponents would have to pass the ball more. Number 4, health. You alluded to that as well. I would, along with health, I would say Jim Schwartz's style of rotating guys in and out. It keeps them fresher. So if fourth quarter, that offensive line has been playing, they don't rotate offensive linemen. You rotate the defensive lineman. Now a guy that's got a quick first step is even, a half step quicker because he's rested.
Yeah, they mentioned a lot of great things. I thought the improvement on offense was a big thing too. How many times did we see where the game would be in a closer game and we're in the football game, but the closer the game is, the more opportunity you have to stick to your game plan. Just go back and look at the Atlanta Falcons game. They were able to run the ball 12, 13 straight times at one point with guys that were on the practice squad or guys that were very good. And guess what happened? They controlled that game. They ended up winning that game, and Marcus Mariota, I think, completed 7 passes. So when you can't stop the run and you don't have an offense that's going to put points on the board that can actually give you a cushion, now you're going to look at a situation where you don't have very many opportunities to rush the passer, and it's going to be different, and play action is involved. Now you're up by 10, you're up by 14. Hey, listen, Lord willing, you're up by 17-21. You already know what's coming. The pass, you're going to get a heavy dose of pass, and that is what you're going to get. And guess what? Guys that make their money, defensive end make their money by pitting their ears back, getting wide out there, and rushing the quarterback. So you're going to see an opportunity just because the Browns offense will be putting more points on the board and be more potent. You're going to get an opportunity to just see what a guy like Myles Garrett can do when you're playing with a league and you know what's coming.
So veterans report to training camp today in Berea. This is from Howard Balzer, a national NFL writer, tweeting out the 11 guys the Browns worked out yesterday, a couple of offensive tackles, a tight end, a defensive tackle, 3 linebackers, a couple of wide receivers, and a guard. A lot of guys that played in the spring leagues, but what that tells you, G. Bush, when you look at it, 5 of them, almost half of the 11 are, 3 of them are linebackers, edge rusher, defensive tackle. That just kind of gives you an idea of the positions that they're looking at to upgrade or bring somebody in.
Oh, we know what they're looking for. You lose a guy like Perion Winfrey. He was going to be a fringe guy, but he was still on the roster and a guy they used, assets and picks on to get. So you lose him, and now you still have a question at your linebacker position. We know what Anthony Walker could do. Taki I think he's going to come around a little longer. JOK, to me, this is a make or break year for him. So you need all that you could make, right? You need all that you could get, because even when you look at the backups like a Phillips, it's tough to pencil those guys in as an automatic guy that's going to be a contributor when Phillips has been hurt his whole career. JOK has not been healthy throughout and has missed a lot of games, and frankly has not stood up to the physical nature of playing linebacker in the league. You got Anthony Walker, who is a leader and who's a guy people look towards, but at the same time, he's coming off a quad injury. So for me, I think the Browns would serve them a great need if they go out and continue to keep their eye on linebacker, because to me, that's still an area of opportunity where they can get better. Receiver is another place where, if you get a guy with a hamstring going down, you might have an issue with that. Like you might have to, go out there and find another receiver and that can play football. But I think D-line and linebacker, they're going to consistently look at a lot of guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do bring in the last cut day. You may see the Browns bring in a guy to sign him to the team that just got released or cut from somebody else the last week of preseason, because they're keeping all the guys. I think it's the 80, 90, whatever it is, 90-man roster, and they cut it down all at once. So you may see a couple of guys who you didn't think were going to be on the team or weren't even on the team during camp that could make the team based on whether or not the defensive tackle room is going to be up to snuff, whether Tristan Hill and Maurice Hurst come back, and do their thing. And then also what's going on with the health of the linebackers, how many reps are they going to be getting, especially if you're looking at Taki, and Phillips and Walker, who had injuries last year.
They will give the young guys training camp to see what they have and then see if they can find an upgrade from somewhere else. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the offensive side of the ball. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Former NFL running back LaShawn McCoy on who is under more pressure, Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers. This is from FS1's Speak.
I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson. I think the easier one would be, A-Rod, the bigger name, the bigger resume, bad Giant or Jets team, now he's there. But I'm going to go with Deshaun. I mean, I think that Deshaun's a younger player, so they expect Deshaun to play a lot longer, where A-Rod, 2 years, the most 3, if that, and Deshaun has a fully guaranteed contract. Yep. We watched Lamar Jackson go through hell to get that $230 million contract, and they gave it to Deshaun Watson. You'll be the hero. You're going to save the day for us. So I look at Deshaun because he's looking to come to the Browns to save the Browns. Every year you always talk about how the Browns, all they need is a quarterback, right? I mean, they were parading around Baker Mayfield because he took them to the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. Even though he was like the last part to that, but he still took them there. Where Deshaun Watson, he's a superstar. I mean, you look at his resume, right? He played with some bad teams, but he was the only shining star they had. So I'm going to Deshaun Watson.
G. Bush, it's an interesting question. Yeah, there are some points. We've talked about it. We've said forever, give the Browns a above average to really good quarterback, and they're a playoff team.
Yeah, they are. And I think this year, and maybe this is a good thing for them because they are in West Virginia, they are away. I think there's this thing to be said for getting away, bonding, getting your mind together, figuring out where you guys want to be at for the first 8 days of camp, and putting in stuff and running offense. Like, there's a thing to be said for that. But when it comes to Deshaun Watson, I've said it all season, there's a lot of people that are consistently putting a lot of eggs in the basket of the six games at the end of the year. I mean, I don't know how other people would take it, but let's be clear. I mean, he was under an indefinite suspension. That could have been. He could have been indicted where he went to jail. It could have been a situation where he was not only suspended this year, but maybe next year, and no one knew what the unprecedented fine could have been. Not to mention, he had not played in any games. He had not been in the preseason, no OTAs, none of that stuff. So every time we get a quarterback, right, and they get a new coach, the first thing we say is, oh, he didn't have a regular offseason. Well, okay, Deshaun Watson didn't have a regular offseason. And even I can even point to the fact that it's unprecedented. No starter has ever come back in the middle of the season that was not injured. Like, he came back in the middle of the season when people were in playoff game shape. I mean, the teams have gone through the bye weeks and they're jockeying for playoff. They're in peak performance and conditioning. Now, you're asking a guy who couldn't even be in the facility or look at the playbooks or call anybody. You're going to say that guy's going to come off the street and light up starting NFL defenders in midseason form? No, it's not happening. So I think sometimes even I drank the Kool-Aid on that. A lot of media guys, even we had unrealistic expectations. So I think this is greatly overstated about what he needs to do, because if you look at a track record of his success, I could give you 9 or 10, 15 different ways to look at his success in the past, and I can say why that is actually the true meaning of where he's going to be at, other than the 6 games that he played last year at the end of the year.
So along those lines, biggest gamble each NFL team is taking this season. This from Sports Illustrated. For the Browns, they say not having buyer's remorse with Deshaun Watson. Browns didn't get many results in year one from their massive investment in Watson, whom they acquired, multiple first-round picks, historic, fully guaranteed contract, endless amounts of scrutiny. 5-year deal was signed in 2022, but it will remain the organization's biggest gamble for years to come. Yeah, it probably is the biggest gamble, and I think if you asked them if they'd do it again, they'd say yes.
Of course it is.
Because well,
it would.
you don't have a guy that's 27 years old who's played in 3 Pro Bowls who becomes available very often. That's why you do that.
You know, once again, it's greatly oversold at the remorse in going after him. No, the remorse that we have is we were 1-16. Excuse me, we were 0-16, 1-15. We went 1-31. They threw a parade. And one of the things that we missed on was the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Baker Mayfield was the number 1 quarterback overall. When you miss on a quarterback number 1 overall, usually the coach is fired, usually the GM is fired. It just so happens with us that they fired the coach that was with Baker the first year and after the first year. So that quarterback was actually thrust upon Barry and Stefanski as a player that they kind of had to take and accept. Now, look, if it doesn't work out in 5 years, would that be a disappointment? Yes. But the one thing that I will always give people credit for is I'm going to be way more upset if you sit there and don't pull the trigger and don't understand what the climate is and don't understand what type of time you want. And that's winning the football when you got an opportunity or a window to do so. I would be more angry and upset if the Cleveland Browns saw their older roster getting older with Batonio and Chubb and you got Myles Garrett and Amari Cooper, and you didn't recognize that you needed to upgrade at that position and you kept Baker Mayfield. Right, or gave him one of those, let's stick around, one of the Jimmy Garoppolo deals. I would have been more upset about that than actually going after a guy who was in his prime, who is a guy that has a superior skill set that can put you over the top. That's the type of, I'm an aggressive person. That's the aggressive nature I like to see. And for those people sitting back, I don't hear much about the Jets. I mean, the Jets, when they got Aaron Rodgers, right? But, you don't hear anything about, well, he's older. They did this. They revamped their receiver core. Don't they need a younger quarterback? You just drafted a guy number overall. No, they don't say any of that. They just slap it up because it's Aaron Rodgers and it's a big city and they like to move. So we're not going to pay attention to you guys. We'll just, we hear you. We hear you, but we'll get back to it because at the end of the day, I think Deshaun Watson is going to have a lot of people eating crow a little bit.
All right, CBSSports.com grading the 7 biggest running back deals since Ezekiel Elliott's contract. Nick Chubb, 3 years, $36.6 million, $20 million guaranteed in 2021. They grade it as an A-. Chubb has shown no signs of slowing down in 2 seasons since signing the deal. Only reason he's not graded higher here is because he doesn't offer much catching the ball out of the backfield. Well, that's because they had Kareem Hunt. We'll see about the backfield. But the only other deal they graded of the 7 as an A- was Derrick Henry. So look at the mess that the running back position is in as far relative to contracts. And, Andrew Berry liked what he saw, liked the intangibles, went out and paid Nick Chubb. That's, again, it's decisive, and it's the sign of a good general manager.
I love it. And I just did a video the other day on my YouTube channel saying why, Nick Chubb is going to be a very big part of what they want to do offensively. And what may be the reason that they're going to be, a team in the playoffs looking to go to the Super Bowl. The one thing that I don't like is that when you simply say you don't do this because that's just the way it is. A lot of people are saying you don't pay running backs because you can get them a dime a dozen. And I do this nice little exercise when people who say that. Jay say, G. Bush, you can get a running back in the 6th round. You can get a running back anywhere. Undrafted free agents, G. Bush, you can get them anywhere. Dime a dozen. Doesn't matter. We love Nick Chubb, but his cap hit for 2024 is like $16 million, and we can't pay him back $16 million. I would say, okay, well, if everybody's the same, let's do this. If everybody was the same, and today you found out that the Browns were trading Nick Chubb to the Baltimore Ravens, what would you say? You look like, oh my Lord, what are we doing? Can you imagine Lamar Jackson and Nick Chubb? Not just that's just one team. Now, what happens if you just say, listen, well, you look, hey, the Bills, they're one-dimensional with Josh Allen. Well, the Browns just traded Nick Chubb to the Buffalo Bills, and now you have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, as well as Nick Chubb running the football. You would be like, what are we doing? The rest of the league might send you hate mail. And then finally, I'll just give it to you. Like, if everybody's the same, right? If they're interchangeable. What if Nick Chubb just decides, you know what? I'm just gonna go out to Kansas City, and I'm gonna just play with Patrick Mahomes and one of the best play callers in the history of the game. Do you think that? No, you'd be an idiot to say that. So sometimes we have to realize that at the end of the day, there are people that transcend their position. They transcend it. Yes, can you win with a small point guard who doesn't play very much defense in the NBA? Well, before Steph Curry, you would say no. But guess what? He brought something different to the table. He transcended it by being able to shoot from half court with accuracy. So, and it took Steve Kerr to give him the green light to understand, you know what? That's a good shot because the number is buried out. I've seen it. He practices that shot. So my thing is the Cleveland Browns, just don't get it twisted. Nick Chubb is a guy who is special. And if you use special people in a special way, they can transcend their position, and then he won't be looked at as a running back. He'll just be looked at as a weapon that you need to get the football.
I kind of put it this way. If he continues 2-3 more years like he has done the first 5, he's a Hall of Famer. You don't let Hall of Famers get off your team if you're trying to win football games. Before I let you go, let me ask you this. Tomorrow, training camp gets underway, West Virginia. Things I want to hear. I want to hear that the defense loves what they are being asked to do by Jim Schwartz. We heard some of that. And I also want to hear that balls are not hitting the ground that Deshaun Watson is throwing. If I hear those two things, I think they're off to a really good start. What are some things you want to hear?
I want to hear the defense feels free to make plays. They have a freedom about themselves. They're out there. They're simplified, and we want to just simplify things to go out there and play fast. Second thing I want to hear on the offensive side of the football is Deshaun Watson looks very focused. He's getting with his guys. His guys seem to have a little bit of a rapport and timing, but overall, there's a sense of urgency when they get in and out of the huddle. And as you said earlier, everything is crisp. There's no walking around. There's no joking and laughing. Guys are locked in. Guys are prepared, and it looks like this is a business trip.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. 11 till noon, 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop. You can also catch him Monday through Friday, 11 to 1, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland with video analysis of how this defense matches up with the Ravens. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. Over the past couple of weeks, we've taken a look at what Jim Schwartz's new defense would look like, and also starting to look at how it matches up with certain offenses around the AFC North. Today, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Whenever we take a deep dive on video analysis, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. And Lance, this is the one I'm really curious about. You have Lamar Jackson. We've talked about this last week. I cannot see any situation where Jim Schwartz is not aggressive with his defense.
Well, there's two ways to look at it when you face a running quarterback. One is you can kind of contain him. A lot of teams will do that with Lamar Jackson or any type of running quarterback, Josh Allen, etc. What I like about Schwartz and what I like about like what the Dolphins did, the Titans did in 19, the Chiefs have done is they say, you know what, we're going to pressure this guy. We're going to pressure this guy, make him make quick decisions. We're gonna force the issue. We're not playing back. We're not going to let him use his athleticism against us. We're going to make more of a pocket guy. I think what Schwartz does has been very successful against these movement quarterbacks in the fact that he's going to pressure the line of scrimmage. The Ravens have gone from one quarterback, coordinator Greg Roman, who I really respected. I thought he did a great job maximizing Jackson's talents, to Todd Monken. And Todd Monken is kind of the offensive version of Schwartz in terms of he's going to find a matchup that he likes. He's going to try to exploit that. So it'll be interesting what they do with Lamar Jackson. Anytime he's in the pocket and not being used as a runner, not being outside the pocket, I think it's a benefit for the Browns.
All right, let's take a look at some video that kind of illustrates some of the things to keep an eye on. So this one, take us through what we see here.
So here's the first cut you're going to get is what I think the Browns are still going to, in terms of what Todd Monken is going to do. This is a two tight end set with a wing. It's a heavy set. I still think the Browns need to prove they can stop the run. So right here, you're just going to get a basic counter look. Everybody talks about the pass rush. Everybody talks about Tomlinson. I still think the Browns need that force safety, and I still think they need a guy inside who's going to stop the run. So you're going to see a dose of this counter action. Monken did a lot of this at Georgia during his last stop when he was with the national champs. So you're going to see a lot of this where you're going to see gap blocking, people blocking down. They're going to challenge the Browns. I think they're going to challenge away from Tomlinson, run at those speed rushers. Best way sometimes to kind of negate a Myles Garrett is to run right at him. So I think you're going to see a ton of this. You're going to see a ton of power football until the Browns show they can stop the run.
Yeah, and it becomes a bigger question, if you're not healthy at defensive tackle as well. Perion Winfrey cut, so there's some concerns with what you have behind Tomlinson. This next clip, and I remember this game against the Dolphins where Lamar Jackson struggled. What do we see here?
You're going to get next couple of clips here is what you're going to get. So what I really like about Schwartz, obviously besides the matchups and besides playing, is that you're going to get a 4, 5, or 6-man front from Schwartz. What the Dolphins do here, Dolphins show 8 and they bring 6. And they did this 40 plus times during this game. Now, they bring different people, and oftentimes they just bring 5 and drop 3. Here they drop 2. What they did is they simulate pressure, and they bring pressure from all different angles. And they're going to bring 3 over 2 to a side with a tackle. They'll bring 4 over 3 with a tight end. But what they do is they cause confusion up top. And when the quarterback, no matter what quarterback it is, he's trying to set protection. He's trying to figure out who's coming, and the Dolphins did such a good job of it. So I think what you're going to see with Schwartz is you're going to see him show 6, 7-man protection and bring 4, but it'll be a different 4 all the time. So this example here, the Dolphins show 8 and they bring 6, and and sometimes they'll bring 7, sometimes they'll bring 4, but for the most part, they're going to show and simulate and bring 4 guys from different areas.
And if you think about it, Lance, that makes a lot of sense to do with the mobile quarterbacks is not really tip where the pressure's coming from and who's dropping, because it negates the athleticism. He doesn't know where to run. He doesn't know where the escape lane is.
Well, yeah, and what the Browns have now is they have with this forefront and with this one hi-hat safety is they're going to get Delpit down in the box or Thornhill down in the box. Those guys will be the roles will be the same. They both can play, but I really see Delpit playing down in the box. So now you got Delpit, you got JOK, you got Walker, you got Phillips. You got these guys who could run. So you can also see, besides pressuring, you're going to see a guy who's going to have his eyes on Jackson, but it's a guy who can run. It's not a big oafy linebacker, a B-gap to B-gap 230 guy. It's a guy who can run and kind of hopefully contain Jackson when he breaks the pocket. And they have a bunch of different guys that can do that, so they can bring guys from different angles and drop different guys. So, again, you're right. They won't know where it's coming from, and he won't know where to get out.
All right. The next clip we're going to look is from the Titans, and it's kind of simulating pressure, if you will.
Well, correct. So this is a good look that I think you'll see with the Browns. So you're going to get both of the backers kind of up in A gap here. we used to call this a blood stunt. And basically what you're doing is you're showing you have a nose and you're showing these two guys in B gaps, A gaps or B gaps, and basically they're walked up. And at the start of the play, there's a 6-man front. So the offensive line has to account for 6, whether they come or not. So this is a great look that I think you'll see with the Browns in terms of this is a nickel guy coming, a backer guy coming, outside backer coming. They can drop different people, they can blitz different people because of the skill set of those Delpits and the JOKs, the Juan Thornhills, the guys who can move, tackle, play in space, play in the box. So you're going to see this. It's a great look. This is the look you'll see from the Browns this year. They're going to show 6 and bring 4. Again, you don't know who's coming. You don't know what coverage it is, and they do a really good job of disguising, and the Titans did this really, really well. This is a playoff game from 2019.
The other thing that does, you can just look, it speeds up kind of the progression in the process that the quarterback's going through. That's just as effective as not allowing him to know where to escape. If you can speed up one of the mobile quarterbacks in terms of his thought process in the play.
Well, yeah, because you're showing 6. So whether you bring 6 or not, you're counting for 6. So the quarterback, his clock has to get faster. So, he assumes 6 is coming, so he's got to assume where is his hot, where is his out route. That's going back to what the Eagles did in 2017. They worked the defensive line linebackers worked with the secondary because they know when pressure's coming or when they think it's going to get pressure, and the secondary can jump routes. So I think this pressure plays into what the Browns do really well. They can pressure the quarterback really well, and they can cover it in the secondary. So, again, they're going to have to stop the run on first down, but then, I think that pressure is really going to be beneficial for them.
All right, last clip we're going to take a look at, and we know when you face the Ravens, you got to find a way to cover Mark Andrews.
So what you see here is that I think what Schwartz does end with matchup. So I know they've added OBJ. I know Zay Flowers. I really liked him coming out of the draft. I know they've added Aguilar. They've added some really good guys. But Lamar Jackson really likes to work Mark Andrews in this between the hashes on big 3rd downs, big 4th downs, when he needs a play, he's looking for Mark Andrews because Mark Andrews is usually matched up against guys that either beat with size or beat with speed if it's a linebacker. What the Browns have is they have bigger guys that can run, JOK, Delpit. So not only can they match up with him size-wise, but they can also match up with him speed-wise. And I think what the Browns need to do, even if they take a Greg Newsome, they have to find Mark Andrews and cover him on big downs and make Lamar Jackson go somewhere else when they need a big play.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind with Andrews too is Martin Emerson. He is big enough and physical enough that he might be able to hang with some of the tight ends.
Yeah, and once again, you got those interchangeable parts. So there's another guy, Martin Emerson, a guy who's long. He can run, so he's not going to get overpowered by Andrews on some of those option routes or where they kind of rub off each other. He's big enough to fight through that stuff, but he also runs well enough. And the Browns have a number of guys that can really, really do that. And again, because of the one high hat safety, whether he moves down to a slot or a tight end, he's still in man coverage. So again, I think Martin Emerson would be a great answer. You got JOK, you got guys who are big, strong, Delpit, Thornhill, guys who can cover, also playing on the box and helping the run if necessary. So
the thing that it comes back to is the versatility that Jim Schwartz likes allows them to match up with different, we talked about the Bengals last week and the 3 wides. Now you're talking about a different skill set, but the Browns have the versatility to be able to defend it, if you will.
Well, the thing I think the Browns have to do is they have to show that they can still stop the run on first down. So they're going to have to, when that first clip showed a power run, I still think you're going to get with Todd Monken, if you watch from his Georgia days, going back to all of his previous stops, that he's going to find a matchup. And right now, the Browns still are undersized at linebacker. They're still a little bit short at the defensive tackle for now. Doesn't mean guys, the Maurice Hurst, these guys, I know they got some guys that they believe can do it, and I think they just need to show it because they have the ability. But I think if you're the Browns right now, what the Ravens can offer you that still might be a struggle is that downhill run game right at you between B and C gap. And that's what the Browns really struggled with last year. And if you struggle on first down, then you can't get the second long, third long.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good film analysis and video breakdown. Check him out, cleveland.com as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Brad Ward on the other side of the break. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Jake Trotter, Browns beat reporter for ESPN, on ESPN Cleveland, talking about the Browns' defensive tackle position after they were forced to waive Perrion Winfrey because of his off-field issues.
There's some concern internally about the defensive tackle position now with Perrion Winfrey gone. And he was going to be one of their top, I think, 3 guys behind the starters, Elliott, Tomlinson, and then I think Perrion was going to be the 3rd guy. So, you know, you've got the kid out of Baylor they drafted, but he's going to be a rookie. And you've got some guys that really haven't shown a lot in that mix. And that was a position that was just a total disaster last year. You lost probably one of your top 2 returning guys from that team. And so I would not be surprised if they are looking around to see what defensive tackles are available.
With that, let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And Brad, we talked about it. There's Dalvin Tomlinson, and then you kind of go, well.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, you know, the thing with losing Perrion Winfrey is he's kind of one of those guys that you were going to hope he could get upfield on 3rd down. So you look at Tomlinson, who's more of a 2-down guy, and Ika, who you think is probably going to be more of a 1st and 2nd down guy. And without Winfrey, you feel like you maybe need somebody that can get upfield and get some push on 3rd down or obvious pass down. So I certainly think that the Browns are going to look around, and there's some names out there. You know, of course, Matt Ioannidis, Shelby Harrison, and Akeem Hicks is a name to keep an eye on as well. As the Browns probably try to add to that room now that Perrion is gone.
All right, well, let's take a look at this. Dogs by Nature, you went through them. Akeem Hicks, Matt Ioannidis, Shelby Harris, all guys that have played in the league, a little bit different skill sets. Do you think they bring in one of these guys, or do you think they wait for cut-down day? Remember, you go from 90 to 53 across the league in one day. So I think we figured it out. It's over 900 free agents become available on one day during the NFL. And these 3 guys aren't in camp. There's usually, I mean, I know they're veterans. You don't want to beat yourself up. But.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the cut down day is going to be chaos, right? So the change in this thing is going to be wild. You know, as you mentioned, thousands of, you know, players or whatever available all at once, changing teams. And the Browns still have some money to spend if they want to, right? And, you know, my whole thing is if you're going to go all in, let's go all the way, right? Like, let's not go all in and then fall short. I think I would feel better if they were on the phone now with one of these veterans and tried to get somebody in camp, right? Than trying to add somebody off another squad. I think any of those 3 guys you mentioned would supply at least some security. That doesn't mean you can't look then at cuts as well and see what's available then. But for the time being, I would feel much better if they added one of those 3.
That's fair. The other issue with Winfrey is you were hoping that was a guy you could develop because, you know, his 2nd year in the league, but you can't. I'm sure they gave him many, hey, you need to, and you know, the last straw was earlier this week. All right, I know this is something that you've done, Ask the Insiders on the Orange and Brown Report. What are the chances an undrafted free agent makes the 53-man roster this year?
Probably not great this year because they're deep, they're talented. The two spots that I think that it's possible is at safety. If you're going to carry 4 safeties, it's pretty much, in my opinion, between Ronnie Hickman, who is a UDFA, and D'Anthony Bell, who I believe was UDFA, who made it last year, right? So those guys will battle that out for that 4th spot. I think Hickman has a shot there. And the other one to keep an eye on, and I've talked about him a lot, is Diabate at linebacker. You know, linebacker is a concern for me. I feel like they need to you're talking about cut downs and looking around. I feel like linebacker is a place they should do that as well. But Diabate is a UDFA who could, you know, if he put together a really good camp and flashed, I think he could make this 53.
Yeah, and the cut down day kind of makes sense with that because that's where you usually get, you know, rookies who are in a situation where there's a bunch of linebackers on this team that are veterans and ready to contribute. You know, you get into the numbers game relative to positions. I know you've written an article about this, curious with it, examining Jim Schwartz's plan for the secondary and how he uses personnel to cover the slot. Take us through that and, you know, what you found in writing that article.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and you know, you can go all the way back to Newsom's drama with, you know, mentioning not wanting to play in the slot and then kind of changing his tune after his meeting with the Browns. But in Schwartz's, you know, defense, he doesn't really ask the slot defender to have as much of a role in the run game as typically you would ask a slot defender to do, or a slot cornerback. I went back and looked at the 17 Eagles, and 53% of the time cornerback lined up in the slot, 34% of the time safeties, and just 9% of the time linebackers. Then kind of for comparison's sake with the 17-game schedule, looked at the Titans, who had, you know, some fingerprints of Schwartz on their defense last year. It was inverted. They only played 39% of the time cornerback in the nickel or in the slot, and then 52% of the time it was a safety. 7.5% of the time it was linebacker. Then we look at the Browns last year, 46% of the time a cornerback, 37 safety, and the highest number, which something I expected changes, kind of the outlier here, is the Browns used linebackers 17% of the time to cover the slot. Not ideal, Joe Woods there. Now you look back at that Eagles team, they had a true nickel cornerback in Patrick Robinson. So that's probably why that cornerback percentage is so high there. But I think that you'll see that cornerback percentage look very similar with this defense, as they have 3 corners they're going to want on the field most of the time. So whether it's Denzel Ward or whether it's Greg Newsome, they've lightened that run responsibility in his scheme a little bit, although you're still going to have to play the run there, but not necessarily be responsible for a fit. And then, you know, they can come inside and worry more about covering the wide receiver or tight end or running back, whatever you're going to deal with when you're in that nickel defense. So, with the Browns cornerback room, I highly expect to see that percentage go way up on the cornerback.
And the other thing is, when you're getting pressure on the quarterback and creating chaos at the line of scrimmage, which Jim Schwartz defenses want to do, it makes covering the slot even a little bit easier.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's what's really interesting too is, and kind of why I wanted to look at this, is because of Rodney McLeod, right? Like, we hear all this good stuff about Rodney McLeod, so now it feels like you have 3 really good safeties too. So how do you, I mean, are they going to roll with 3 safeties, 3 corners? So that's kind of why I wanted to look at it. And you find some numbers that are pretty much don't really tell much of a tale, other than that when they did have a true slot corner, they leaned towards cornerback. So I would think that would be the case this year with the Browns. But the crazy thing is to think about is, you got to think that Schwartz is going to want McLeod to be on the field a lot. So, you know, do we see a lot of that dime too? And how does he work that in? So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, he's very good at finding matchups that he thinks works, and that will be a very welcome sight on a Browns defense.
Yes.
Brad Ward
Absolutely.
from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and I can step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We'll hear what some national folks expect from the Browns, Deshaun Watson, and Kevin Stefanski. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Emmanuel Acho from FS1's Speak on the expectations for Deshaun Watson this year in Kevin Stefanski's offense.
Let's not allow Deshaun Watson to lower the bar for us and then watch him jump over a lower bar. Remember who Deshaun Watson is. Remember who he was.
There you go.
He led the entire National Football League in passing yards the last time we saw him play a full season. It didn't amount to anything. They went 4-12, the Houston Texans did. Remember who the Cleveland Browns were right before Deshaun Watson. While Deshaun was simultaneously leading the league in passing yards, the Cleveland Browns had a Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski, that year. They went 11-5. With Baker Mayfield, they won a playoff game. With Baker Mayfield, they won a playoff game. So what the Browns were thinking, well, if we add one of the best quarterbacks in football, a top 5 quarterback at the time, to one of the best teams in football, the Cleveland Browns, then that is Super Bowl as well. Not to mention, we have a coach who just won Coach of the Year. The reason I cut you off, James, is because we got to remember the Cleveland Browns were an 11-5 football team with Baker Mayfield, led by a Coach of the Year who didn't have a quarterback. Insert quarterback, then the Cleveland Browns, in theory, are supposed to be what we are all claiming the Jets are supposed to be, Slick. I think Deshaun has pressure, like Shady said, as well.
Brad, when you look at it in that lens, Kevin Stefanski has not had a healthy quarterback that would be well, Jacoby Brissett was healthy. He played well, but he's not considered a starter. Baker Mayfield, 11-5, tore up his shoulder. And it's the national people that are kind of lowering the bar, I think, for Deshaun Watson. I think the local people expect him to be really good.
I do too. And it's a lot of this, right? Like, it's a lot of expectations and pressure. And I don't know that he feels it that way because it's been such a quiet off season. They've kept him kind of out of the limelight. And but when you see these national shows, there's a lot of that, this is what the expectation should be. I've seen on that channel before them talk about the same thing or and kind of rant about the money and the money should lead to the expectation and stuff like that. I think that Deshaun, for me, my expectation is that, he doesn't necessarily have to return fully to 2020 form. Sure, I think he'll play at times like that or for stretches and hopefully he gets hot late in the year like that. But, if he can be a top 10 quarterback, then they will be successful. Like, he doesn't have to be everything all at once like everybody wants him to be.
No, the way I would describe it, he has to be the guy in the fourth quarter that other teams say, man, I don't want him to have the ball with 3 minutes left because there's a pretty good chance we're going to lose if he does. If he's that, they're in really good shape.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? I expect that. Like, I expect him to play well. I really do. Like, I just think that I don't really understand the logic in pointing to the smaller sample size and saying that's going to be the reality moving forward. It would seem to make sense to point to the larger sample size and say that's more likely of what we're going to get in the long term.
The only way the small sample size would be more likely is if he was 33 or 40. If he's 27,
Exactly.
he should be entering the prime of his career. I know you've done this as well as the Ask the Insiders. How much do you expect him to play in the preseason, being Deshaun Watson?
So, Stefanski is very not playing his guys, right? He likes to put them in bubble wrap. He hasn't played them a whole lot in the past. So I was kind of looking at the schedule, and they have that weird schedule with the 4 games. So normally for teams, it would be like your dress rehearsal would be game 3. Now, for the Browns, that's Eagles week, where they're going to be in Philadelphia. They're going to have those practices, the joint practices, and then the game. In the past, Kevin has not played his starters very much in the games following those joint practice weeks. So I kind of think he'll play maybe a series there or 2, and then again in game 4 as kind of the dress rehearsal, because they do have a week off before week 1. So, which is weird, right? So because of the week off, I think you can go ahead and treat, the last preseason game against the Chiefs as your dress rehearsal. So I think maybe he'll get a series or 2 at the end of that Philly week. And then again in the final game of the preseason, but not much more than that, I wouldn't expect. Just going off Kevin's past, I think he feels pretty comfortable keeping his guys out there for a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and again, if it's the injury concern, I would imagine, is the reason for that. Let's take a look at this. So earlier in the show, we told you the Browns worked out 11 guys yesterday. They are signing a wide receiver, Austin Watkins, who was one of those 11. Wouldn't read too much into it. He might be an intriguing guy that ends up on the practice squad. Could be just a guy they're bringing into camp because they want to get a look at him. He's going to have a real tough time making the 53-man roster as a wide receiver, but he could end up being a practice squad guy.
He is. He's actually really intriguing. He was projected by a lot of people to go in the 4th, 5th round of what would have been 2 years ago's draft, right? He played spring football for the Birmingham, I don't know what, Stallions, maybe? I'm going to take a shot at that. He played at UAB, but he's a big physical receiver. And 1 year at UAB caught 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, he does have, he was projected to get drafted and all that stuff, but just didn't happen for him. I think he's interesting, and he's Sammy Watkins' cousin, interestingly enough.
Yeah. So again, big body receiver. You take a chance, see if you can. In theory, you'd be able to get him on the practice squad. So you find out if you can develop a guy. I know you've answered this from your mailbag questions. Found it really interesting. Browns have choices to make with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nick Chubb in 2024. Do you think both are on the roster in 2024? If not, which one is more likely to be?
I think that Chubb is more likely to be here. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, listen, I think that they have left it more open than a lot of people think, or just kind of, saying that DPJ is, I wrote about this, but DPJ is kind of gone no matter what. I think there's a couple outcomes in which he can stay, but they are planning, or it looks like they've drafted his replacement in Cedric Tillman, right? And they don't necessarily want to pay him a lot of money for an extension. But there's a couple things that could happen this year that could lead to him coming back. You could see, and I really hope this doesn't happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. You could see Cooper fall off a little bit because of the age thing, and Donovan Peoples-Jones maybe surges and gets over 1,000 yards, and he looks really good. And instead of moving off of DPJ, they feel like they maybe need to move off of Cooper. That could end up with him coming back. The other outcome is his production goes way down and a market doesn't develop for him, and then they keep him that way. So I think those are the two most likely ways that Donovan comes back. But I do think that, if we talk about Tillman, they kind of are planning for his exodus after the season. Nick Chubb, I think that we're kind of in wait and see mode, right? $16.2 million cap hit next year, no guaranteed money. I think a restructure is needed and is coming, but I think you got to wait and see what this offense looks like with him before that figure kind of takes shape.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think they try to find a way to keep him long term. Be it, and again, he realizes what the market is. Saquon Barkley is talking about not playing at all. They went out and signed Robinson earlier this afternoon. So the Giants are at least acting like they believe Saquon when he says he might not come in. So if there is a way to find a way to keep Nick Chubb in a Browns uniform, as he, assuming, and there's no reason not to assume, he's going to be productive, I think they try to restructure and find a way to keep him here another 3, 4, 5 years. And if all goes well, he ends up with a gold jacket and is in the Hall of Fame, because that's the way he's trending. He's done things that nobody else has done in the league.
Yeah, and in the way the running back market is going, it should be much more affordable than we ever thought it would be, right? So
yeah, again, they gave him that contract because they liked him not only on the field but what he stood for. So there's no reason to think that they won't try to find a way to continue that. Brad Ward, we're out of time, man. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
You are the best. Thank you so much for having me.
Brad Ward, Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Always really good stuff. Make sure you check it out. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.